dip in your hip and glide in your stride. Welcome to the mothership, the home of the travelers of the universe, with shows throughout the week. Everything you want, everything you could need. From the paranormal to the supernatural, from the spiritual to the unknown, from emotions to comedy. You can find us at Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, and so much more. This is R.I.F.T Nation Network, the RNN. And now, your featured show. Shall we begin?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. You are here on the Orion Effect. I am the Hitman with our amazing hostess, Rhonda Harris.
Hello.
And co-hosting with me tonight is the amazing, yes, that's right. Yep, that's right. Ken's in the house, Ken Bellows. Everybody welcome Ken and welcome to the show.
Hey, everybody. I'm glad to be here with Howie tonight. Ed. And
okay.
Like I said, it's going to be a fantastic show. That's why KB came down to see the real deal do the show. And looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun time. I'm a little feared about being in here.
No,
I'm
don't worry.
Afraid.
Don't worry.
It was quiet all day.
It was quiet. Once you left, Rhonda, it kind of got a little going. But we are live here at the cabin on 360, as KB was saying, right there.
Yeah. I'm afraid.
Don't worry, they got you.
I'm afraid.
Yeah, you may hear some weird things, but if that's okay, they're just showing their love.
I got a lot of love to get back to them.
There it is. There it is.
Hey, you're sitting in the chair, KB, where they like to come touch you on the leg.
Long as it's the female ghost, I'm okay with that. It's the other ones I worry about, you know. And you know, saying it cause you to hurt yourself. Getting out of here would do that to me. I would run into the walls and doors and everything.
That's all right. I got you.
You got me?
Yeah.
Okay.
We got a great show scheduled for y'all tonight. We have a very special guest. We're going to bring him on in just a second. We have a lot of good things happening right now. Hey, Rhonda, I'm going to hand it over to you. Let's say hello.
All right. Well, hello to Lisa Auxier. We've also got Mama Raven Swan in the house, Lois Clark, Booze Paranormal, Lisa Nelson, Lisa Campbell, Ryan C. Jones. We got the group is all gathering.
Hey, we got to give that props tonight.
Yeah.
After the show, Ryan C. Jones's show, freaking awesome show, 10-year anniversary at 9:00. Don't miss it. Rhonda and I will be on with him.
Yes.
Yeah. We're excited. We're also, oh, good Lord. We're excited about who we're about to have on in just a second. I mean, we really are. I'm going to bring that up. Hit that wrong button. That's the only thing I hate about that is the wrong button. You hit it, goes all crazy. But hello to everybody, and thank you for joining us. Tonight, we have a very special gentleman that's joining us from Tennessee. His name is Pat Fitzhugh, and he's going to talk to us about the truth about the Bell Witch. What do you say we go ahead and bring him on? Let's get this show started.
Let's do it.
Hey, Pat, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing? Good evening. How's it going?
Doing well, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Pat is not only a researcher, he's also an author. He's written 3 books about the Bell Witch, so we're excited about having him on tonight. Pat,
I'm excited to hear it.
I'll tell you, we're about to learn some new stuff.
I like to hear that. Howard knows that when I worked at the AM FM radio stations, we had a guy that came on many years ago. We're talking about the Bell Witch. I'm hoping tonight I hear from an expert and learn a lot more.
Pat, can you hear us?
Yeah, I got you loud and clear.
Okay. I just want to make sure because sometimes the signal may be a little skewed, if you will.
Yeah, we're preparing for a winter storm here in Nashville. And I'll tell you, I think everything, internet included, is already starting to freeze up. So, yeah, I'm having to kind of recheck my connection every few minutes as well. But, as long as the old Bell Witch doesn't get in the way and play tricks on us, I think we'll be okay and have a good show.
We're going to wait. It's going to be good. It's going to be good. I'm going to do that so people can see me there because I just noticed the QR was hiding my face. Not a bad thing, but, it happens. We have a lot of, like Rhonda said, we have a lot of new travelers, a lot of old travelers, and we thank you all for tuning in, and we got it all shared out. So Pat reached out to me several months ago, and we've been chatting, and he told me about the Bell Witch in general, a little bit of the information stuff. I was like, no way, no. So I was like, let's definitely have him on. And Pat, this is Rhonda Harris. Rhonda, this is Pat Fitzhugh.
Nice to meet you.
Hey, Rhonda, great to meet you.
And our co-host of the night, KB.
Hey, good nice meeting you.
Hey, KB, nice to meet you.
Same here.
So, Pat, tell us some of this fiction to nonfiction about the Bell Witch. And there's a lot of people need to hear a lot what you have to say, and we're all about that. Chat, if you have questions, ask away, and we'll make sure your question gets heard.
Well, the Bell Witch is one of the oldest and definitely one of the most controversial paranormal cases in the United States. Dates back to the early 1800s. And ever since then, when a small series of events happened, the story has built and just grown exponentially through embellishment, both intentional and non-intentional, and just the word getting out. The Bell Witch was once just a local story, local case. Then it became regional, and then about 1999, people started hearing about it all over, and now it is a major global paranormal case. Us researchers will call it case. Some call it folklore when, it has plenty folklore aspects, undoubtedly. But we call it different things. But in the end, it is the Bell Witch. It's a globally known phenomenon. And it's very complex, a lot of different elements involved, a lot of different possible entity types, a lot of different folklore theories, a lot of different skeptical theories, a whole lot of these things just, snowballed into this big mass that we call the case of the Bell Witch.
And there's a lot of misinformation about the Bell Witch. Is that correct?
That's correct. Pretty much everywhere I look and everywhere I go, I can't even go to the bathroom without seeing or hearing a lot of misinformation. And that's not just with the Bell Witch case. That's true with a lot of cases when you have this storyline that is terrifying. And then people hear that, they get excited, they retell it. Sometimes they retell it differently, and so on and so forth. And, because of the popularity of the legend, there are a lot of people out there covering it, especially nowadays after the first of the year on YouTube and everything. In a lot of cases, these people have a lot of different podcasts and shows and other things to get into. And,
Mhm.
they could just barely skim the surface. And in doing so, can only find a lot of the popular myths about the legend and not really be able to dig in and separate fact from fiction, myth versus reality, and that sort of thing. So, what you get is thousands, perhaps millions of different podcasts, YouTube videos, books, all saying the same thing or essentially the same thing about the Bell Witch. And a lot of that even contains misinformation. But like I
Right.
say, it's a very deep and complex case, and not everybody has the time to dig down really deep or spend most of their life researching it like I have. So, there's a
Right.
lot of misinformation out there, and unfortunately, the places that seem to have sent out the most misinformation are the ones with the widest audience. So that makes it pretty hard for the actual researchers of the case to get any information out there, much less convince anybody what is the real parts and what's not real.
Right.
Yeah, I want to
Where
ask you a
did
question. Where did the Bell Witch? Where did it originally start? When did it the legend came to be?
Well, the first so called disturbance was around 1817, and this was in the Red River region of Middle Tennessee. It's about 55, 60 miles northwest of Nashville. Actually, they called it the Red River Settlement. And, 1817 was the first alleged encounter with this thing.
it's interesting. I like the word you use, thing. Why would you use that terminology, Pat? Because some people need to hear that.
Well, because nobody knows what it is. I know a lot of us, or a lot of people, think they know what it is or can identify it, but at the end of the day, all we have are opinions,
Right.
and that's true with me as well.
Right.
When I say thing, it kind of goes back to one of the big pieces of misinformation about the case. But if you look at all of the different accounts of what happened, not just the early accounts that were talked about right when these things were going on, but even later accounts that even embellish the story, you don't see any one entity coming into light. A lot of people will say, "Oh, well, it was a poltergeist." Well, yeah, there were absolutely a lot of poltergeist characteristics uh, to some of the early accounts of it, undoubtedly. But if you keep looking at the different accounts and studying those, you'll find that the actions or disturbances described fit different categories
Yeah.
of entities. That is, if you're going with a supernatural theory, I mean, we see things that were apparitions, which would look to ghosting or doppelgangers. We have the noise and the throwing and moving of objects, which undoubtedly would be poltergeist. We have something with an intelligence, which would point to more of a spiritual thing. We also have a lot of malevolence involved all throughout the timeline, which could point to something demonic. And that is if you're going with paranormal theories for the whole thing.
Let me ask
So,
you. Let me ask you this, if you don't mind. Well, had the story of the Bell Witch originated back when you said, but had to the myth, or what people call, why did they call her a witch, and what brought it on?
You're beating me to the questions,
Well,
man.
that's what,
yeah, I understand. And I'll be the first to tell you this thing was not a witch. And a lot of people know that. But here's the deal with that. This happened 125 years after the Salem witch trials. This
Right.
happened only a few years after a very violent series of earthquakes about 200 miles to the west called the New Madrid or Madrid, depending on what area of the country you're from, earthquakes along that fault line, which actually formed Reelfoot Lake in West Tennessee. So you had that. You also had a lot of religious stuff going on in the Baptist church, having to do with Calvinism, Arminianism, the Baptists versus the Free Will Baptists, and also New Lights versus Old Lights Presbyterian. So you look at the religious turmoil or religious events going on, then you have this earthquake that shook everything, and according to some accounts, even made the Liberty Bell ring up in Pennsylvania.
Right.
Plus, the Mississippi River run backwards, and we're 100 years or so after the Salem witch trials. Pretty much anything that had a great strength, especially if it was malevolent or could be construed as malevolent, was thought to be witchcraft or
Right.
the work of witches. So that label was attached to it early on. Some accounts say that General Andrew Jackson, who later became president of the United States, first coined the phrase when he allegedly said that he would rather fight the British in New Orleans than to deal with the Old Bell Witch.
Y'all are see, this is what I get for dealing with highly intelligent people. You're answering all the questions I might have had, you guys. This is awesome. I love this factor. I do. Rhonda, could you ask Lisa's question? Let's try to get that in there.
Okay, yeah. So Lisa asked, so how do you feel about Ingram's take on it in his literature?
I think the Ingram book is an entire work of fiction. It's very entertaining, especially if you want to know about the everyday pleasantries and triumphs of life in the Red River settlement in the early 1800s. But I do feel it's a work of fiction, and there's not much of anything there for the serious researcher to glean.
Right.
If we go back, well, one piece of information or misinformation is that Ingram's book was the original account. That's not the original account. The original account came from Captain James Bell, no relation to John Bell, or excuse me, Captain John R. Bell. Could you hold on for just 1 minute,
Sure,
please? I'm so
absolutely.
sorry. I'll be
No,
right
you're
back.
fine. Yeah. I think this is awesome. We're getting, see, this is why I wanted to have this show, you guys, that
Yeah.
he's bringing the truth. What you might have thought you heard, this man has amazing history and research.
But see, I'm sure you will get to the question, but
Okay.
I want to know what was
I'm
her
back.
thought. Did people tell her, hey, you're a witch? How did she react? Or things like that. I mean, I like to know what
Let's see
her
if
thoughts
Pat
were.
has any documentation on
Yeah,
that.
let's find out.
Okay, I'm back. I'm gonna go ahead and finish my answer. I apologize
Yeah.
for the inconvenience. I think the
Perfect.
Bell Witch was messing with my lighting, and I had to jump all over the Bell Witch about that. So I apologize for that unnecessary interruption. Captain John R. Bell was not related to the Bell family. He was with the Lewis Clark expedition, and on his way back to Washington, he went through the area and he kept a very comprehensive diary because being a journalist or the scribe was one of his primary functions on that expedition. And he first spoke about this, talking about how he'd heard about it when he stayed overnight near the location of the Bell home. And that original account goes as follows. There was a young girl who had voices surrounding her everywhere she went. These voices would tell her that she needs to marry a local guy named Joshua Gardner, and the voices were only heard when the lights were out and her brothers were around. And that is the original account of the Bell Witch. Then there's another corroborating account or complementing account that came out in the Saturday Evening Post. I think it was January of 1853, maybe 1856. I'll have to look back at my notes. But, a girl surrounded by voices. Some people thought it was supernatural. Some people dismissed it or claimed immediately that it was the workings of the devil. And others said it was a hoax being perpetuated by Betsy and her brothers. And the story set around, and by about 1890 or so, had just about died. Then a former newspaper publisher, Martin Ingram, wrote his book. which has a little bit of reference to the original accounts, but not much. Namely, the Joshua Gardner thing. Except in his account, the entity says not to marry Joshua Gardner, and then it is full of a lot of different stories, most of which fit the category of classic folklore tropes that you can read about in a whole lot of other stories. And it looked like they were adapted to beat the area during that time frame, as well as the Bell family, with whom he was slightly familiar because he was real good friends with their youngest son. So my take on the Ingram account, it's entertaining reading, but if you want to get more out of it, you're going to have to go deeper.
Yeah, and I think we're going to really touch on that subject tonight.
Yeah. Is the house still standing, or is it no longer there where she lived at?
No, the house was, the Bell family home was raised, I think, around 1853, 1855. The only reference we have to that was a letter from one of the Bell sons to the other Bell son, while one had moved off to a southern state and the other was still living there in northwestern Robertson County. And if you look at that letter, which could, at the time, I found in the Springfield, Tennessee library in the Gene Derritt collection, or actually it was the Covington collection of Old Bell information. You can pretty much say it was raised around or torn down around 1855.
Wow.
Do you know? Would you know if the foundation's still out there in the woods? Have you ever been to that property?
Yeah, I was given permission to enter that property to take some pictures and everything before my first book on the subject years ago, and I got to visit the property and the graveyard and everything at that time. The foundation is anybody's question. What you have to look at is there are two locations on that tract of property, the house tract, where people say the house stood. One is behind where a barn stood until about probably 10 years ago. It's way behind that. There are some trees, there's a sinkhole, and some rocks. Some say that that was the foundation of the Bell home, and I felt that way too. Then I learned about another area up on kind of a plateau or a little hill, or back then they would call it a knoll, Knoll, which, if you look at it, or I'm told that if you look at it a certain way, you can see the difference in the dirt, and it's in the shape of where a house and a dog with a dog leg would have been. And if you look at some of the earlier accounts of that history in that area, the house was atop a grassy knoll. And I don't know what, if any, rocks are underneath it. Probably not much, because that land is now used for farming.
Okay.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
You kind of talked about different theories like poltergeist, something spiritual like a ghost, demon. Is there any theory that it was none of the above and that it was some sort of something just going on within the household? Meaning, sometimes we hear about in paranormal investigating that sometimes it's a mental health issue or it's abuse in the family or something else that's being blamed on something supernatural. So is there any theories that there was something else going on in the household?
Bingo.
Oh, yeah, there are a ton of theories. The one theory, now we're talking non-paranormal. If we're talking non-paranormal, one theory is that Betsy's older brother, John Jr., learned ventriloquism while in New Orleans and taught it to one of the other brothers, and they got in cahoots with Betsy, just trying to do something fun, but people took it seriously, and it grew into something really big and attracted people from miles around. As far as mental health is concerned, we don't know anything specifically about the mental or physical health of the Bell family. Every family has certain things that run in the family, and that would include the Bells, but we don't know specifically the John or Betsy Bell or anything else. But I will say this: people came from all over to see or encounter this thing. or investigated. And
Yeah.
that's not something that just came from Ingram. I mean, some early accounts mention that as well. So
Right.
I think if it were something going on with just the family and in the home, I don't know that these other people would have experienced it too. You
Now
know,
that
I have not. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Pat. I was just going to ask. I was going to make a point. We know in history, especially such countries such as France and Britain, over in the UK, the rye can cause an issue like hallucinations and sickness. It makes you wonder if we take the paranormal out of it, if there's a possibility if the water supply was contaminated or if the food supply may have been contaminated to have these issues. You
Well,
know,
you're starting to sound like Pat Fitzhugh.
yep.
Um, it's
I take that as
possible.
a compliment, sir.
It's possible. And I have actually done, or actually since the year about 2006, I have been working on and deeply researching such a theory that would explain it all. Um, I'm not ready to present that theory. I have the theory, but I have to look. What's the best uh, venue to present that theory? I
Right.
mean, some people will say, "Well, another book." Well, this is year 2024. People don't read anymore, so do I do it free on the internet? But there's a theory I've been working on for a long time. It's not what you're talking about, but it's along those lines.
Right.
You know,
I'm trying to get in here, so I was seeing if one of them will allow us to show the background. And unfortunately, it's not. I actually have all three of your books posted on our background, and for those viewers, please check the three books out. You can check them out. I think you're on Amazon. Is that correct, Pat? Your books are on Amazon, or
uh, as for the Bell Witch, the only one I keep in print is the Bell Witch, the full account, which was the successor to the Bell Witch Haunting.
okay?
It's available on Amazon and other online booksellers, and probably about a quarter of the brick and mortar bookstores. And around Halloween time, about half of them will carry it.
What got you interested in the Bell Witch? What made you want to write about her?
Well, I've always been interested in things that go bump in the night, or more specifically, mysteries and history
Right.
behind things that go bump in the night. And this dates back to when I was a small child and I was trying to go to sleep one night and I couldn't. And my mother, of all things, read me a story about the Bell Witch. I don't know why she thought that would put me to sleep, but it did. And the reason why is after she read me this story out of a Bell Witch children's book called The Bell Witch at Adams by Gladys
Right.
Barr, I got to thinking to myself, how could this be true? I was a little kid, but, I was still questioning things then, trying to separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. And I worried myself to death that night thinking, how could this be true? What parts could be true? What parts are half truth? And so on. It put me to sleep. So she succeeded in that matter. And also, got me more interested in the case and wanting to find out more. I think the real big thing that really pushed me into that case was when my mother started telling me about all these friends she had gone to school with who were descendants of the Bell family. And I was like, you mean these people were real? And she's like, yeah, this was over at Red River at Adams. It's right next to Cedar Hill where your aunts and we all grew up.
Right.
So, I mean, she grew up very near ground zero and had been hearing the Bell Witch and everything all her life. So when I heard that these people and places were real and that half, my maternal side of my family actually was from and grew up right there near ground zero, that really, stimulated me to want to learn more and, get to the bottom of it. So I started researching it seriously a few years later, not necessarily trying to find out what kind of entity did this or did that or
Yeah.
how many times the entity changed during that 4-year period, but essentially what really happened to give rise to the whole case, whether it be something paranormal, whether it be something natural, whether it be a human invention or what have you, but just to get to the
Exactly.
bottom of what gave rise to it.
I mean, that's what we paranormal investigators want to do, is get to the base. Can we debunk? Can we understand? Now we know that back in the day, okay, we're talking back then, you had so many effects on stories. You had the religious point, you had the spiritual point, and then you had the people who are just non-believers. How it makes you wonder how that all mixed up to create this very story. When, like you said, Pat, and multiple stories have been told about the same story. It sounds like kind of what they did in Jersey with the Jersey Devil. You know, that whole mixing of this happened and
Oh,
that
yeah.
happened. How did it conglomerate the whole
Well,
nine?
what I was thinking about, and you guys forgive me because I'm having a semi-senior moment. It was about these three, I guess they were teenagers. It happened so they alleged, in Maryland, and they went to the woods. And if you can think of that movie,
Oh, me and Pat talked about this. You talked about Blair Witch.
Blair Witch.
Yes.
Now, this reminds me a lot of the witch. I mean, even though they didn't do that, but it almost got the same type of feel to it. You know, when you went there that time and you saw the foundation, what was your feeling? Did you have anything mentally or physically happen to you, or what did you feel like?
Oh yeah, when he was on site.
Yeah.
Well, it was a feeling of, you know, finally at last, I'm able to get on that actual land,
Mhm.
you know, feel the land beneath my feet, the same land that they felt beneath their feet. Also, historical discovery, looking around, making notes, um, you know, fascination, that sort of thing. I will point out, however, that much of that property is viewable from the local roads.
Okay.
So, you know, it's not a hidden secret way, way back in the woods somewhere per se, but, you know, seeing it from the road and looking with binoculars, you can see and learn a lot. But there's just that feeling of actually being there, stepping foot actually into that area that's, you know, much different from, you know, just looking out a car window.
Gotcha. I have one more thing to add to that. Then I'm going to let Rhonda go back to chat. Is, you know, with saying that, looking at it from the road, right? Looking at it from the distance or with binoculars, we've got modern technology now. Have you ever used Google Earth to actually zoom in and look at the surrounding area and locations and the different things that we may not be able to see on a regular eye?
Yes, many times. Zoomed in on it. Um, I also, which has to do with my flying, I have an aviation app that will do similar to the same thing and
Okay.
actually zoom down in. So, you know, yeah, Google Maps is great. Um, Aerial photography, drone photography. I've never flown a drone over there, but I know in at least with at least one TV show or two shows, excuse me, uh, you know, drones were flown over there.
Okay. And see, that's my point. Because when we pull all of this together, we can take our modern technology and take it back and we can see the structures and the understanding. Because I'm really curious on how the cave came about. But we'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to hand it over to Rhonda and let our travelers ask their questions.
Yeah, I was going to say the cave is one of my curiosities too. But the question we have from Lisa is, what paranormal experiences have people had since then? I'm thinking if more people have experienced it, could it be in the air, possibly an earth event?
Ooh.
Well, it's kind of odd that you would say that or that she would ask that because in one particular account, which I don't know is true or not, but the when asked what it was or if they could escape this entity, it is said to have told them that you can never leave me. I'm in the air you breathe. I'm in the water you drink. I am everywhere. So
Whoa.
that's pretty interesting. But back to the question, could it have been something in the air, the water, or what, or other people having, well, as far as the air and the water, that'll come up with a new theory. I just don't know whether I'm going to throw a new book out there or what I'm going to do to get that theory out to as many people as I can. But, you know, people have always reported strange encounters there. Um, and when I say there, I'm talking about not only on the old Bell Farm, of which the cave portion was part of, but in that general area, let's say in about a 6 square mile radius of where the old house stood. Some of the experiences, people have reported hearing their name whispered. People have reported having their earlobes pinched, uh, being poked by something that they can't see. And there have been quite a few anomalous photographs and videos, some of which even show what looks like or what could be construed as an apparition of a person. So,
Mm.
that has always been the case in the area. And, whether those are tied to the Bell Witch legend or to Native American spirituality and the fact that there are Native American burial grounds in the area from back in the mound builder period, or
Mhm.
whether it could be tied to superstition. Uh, I don't know. And the Bell Witch was not the only thing in the area that was not such a good thing. There was also a period in which the tobacco farmers and a cooperative kind of were eating each other's throats. I don't know the exact story, but I know there were night riders riding around doing some killings there in
Okay,
the area.
see, I wasn't expecting you to bring that up. Thank you for saying that, Pat. I mean, that's
And
proven.
Native American fighting, as well as a couple Civil War skirmishes. So
Yeah,
it's the classic dark and bloody ground.
yeah. You know what's really ironic to me, and I'm just going to pull this out of my hat, if you will, is how many myths and legends surround Native American burial grounds. I mean, think about it.
Well,
So many of our American legends and horror stories, something has to do with the Native American burial ground. It's just intriguing to me. It's like the white lady.
Yeah.
We see her everywhere, supposedly. It, it's just, I know. Don't worry, you're being watched.
I'm a fear.
We're in an active location, by the
I'm a
way,
fear.
Pat. We're just letting
But
you
I
know.
won't worry about it.
Yep, don't.
No, I got Universal shoes on.
Okay, well, you're good. Just ground it
I can
down.
run.
You're fine.
Yeah.
But let's go back to look at that real quick. We look at the Native American burial grounds, but we've got to take into consideration a few things. Back in the day, still back in the 1800s, you still had the church that was under power. Look at today and how we perceive Exodus. Okay, the Bible. We're looking at that. Oh, what signs are coming to the end? Back then, if they're like you said, Pat, the earthquake, natural disasters, many things, these things could lead to them thinking that the witch was involved in creating this curse. Would you agree with that statement?
well, I think those events happening caused people to question a lot of things, namely themselves and their own beliefs at
Yes.
the time. Um, I think that these events and some others which aren't quite as well known served to make it conducive for people to maybe overreact to the bell disturbances in some cases. Or it
Right.
may, or, looking at it from a purely paranormal standpoint, it set off a chain of spiritual events that opened a portal right there at the Bell Farm.
Mhm.
So, a lot of ways to look at it, but I do think the events up to and surrounding the actual Bell Witch case had much to do with how people perceived it then and even now.
I exactly. I could not agree more with you on that one. Keith says sacred ground. It's protected by the Great Spirit. Amen, brother. That's not what we're saying, but I totally agree with you. And sacred spirit. Could the sacred spirit be wanting to protect that location if there was a spiritual ground there? I totally understand and get that. I just wanted to make a point. It's just interesting how many of paranormal cases and myth and legends that we hear about spiritual ground. Monica, hello and welcome to the show. KB's got a great question. He beat me to it once again. We're thinking together here. Rhonda, you should have been here. I want you to do that. That's all you, dog.
Yeah.
That's all you. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering what was the last sighting of the witch, if any? When was the last that you know about somebody alleged that they seen the witch, the Bell Witch?
I don't know when there was the last sighting of an apparition or an encounter, per se, because, I hear about this stuff all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes on a daily basis, and sometimes these are accounts that people have sent me after having visited the place in the last few days. Sometimes, there are stories people send of where they visited the area way, way back when, and they're telling, what happened way back then. So I don't know exactly when the last sighting or last perceived Bell Witch encounter occurred. I mean, it's just literally a constant thing.
So the Bell Witch, I guess the legend of the Bell Witch happened. Did it happen while she was alive, or did it happen after she passed away?
Oh, good question.
Well, when we say alive or passed away, who are we talking about? After who was alive?
The witch herself. When did it actually people starting the legend or or something like that about the Bell Witch? Was she alive when it started happening and people started talking about her because maybe something she's done to the public?
Well,
had she a reputation?
Yeah.
Well, it was an invisible entity mostly, except for some apparition type manifestations.
Mm.
And, there's not a birth or death to it. It came into fruition allegedly about 1817.
Mm-hmm.
It cannot be tied to an individual, but perhaps one of the biggest pieces of misinformation out there, which was debunked, it'll be 24 years ago this October, but yet people love it and people keep publishing it, was that the Bell Witch was a local woman by the name of Kate Batts, who research has proven had nothing whatsoever to do with the case. She just happened to be some of the Bell's neighbors. People kind of looked down on her in the area because she was trying to run a farm by herself along with her kids, because her husband was an invalid and because she didn't have much money.
Right.
So, people looked down on her, and she reportedly had some pretty strange ways about her. So,
now, to your knowledge, do you know of any family members might be living today that's related to her or anything like that? And have you ever tried to contact one of the family members, and maybe they could tell you the history of their grandmother, great grandmother, or whatever? Have you ever tried that?
Are you talking about to the lady named Batts?
Yeah.
She has descendants today. In fact, some of them live in a little town or near a little town where I used to live. Unfortunately, I've never talked to them or met with them. I have on occasion through the years, maybe twice, tried to reach out where we could sit down and compare notes.
Right.
But for years, the hype was that Kate Batts was the Bell Witch, even though she had nothing to do with it. And still today, people are insisting that, and sending it out to millions of people on YouTube and everywhere else, when nothing could be farther from the truth. But
if the legend happened, Pat, if the legend happened, and they say that she had nothing to do with it, how actually did it start? Where did the legend come from? I mean, how did it become a legend?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a legend because we can't prove every bit of it piece by piece, but it
Mhm.
started back in 1817. At least that was the first account of it.
Right.
And the
Yeah, I
only
would love to learn the focus of it and why did it start. I mean, that's just me being me.
Oh, how is the Bass effect
Yeah, I mean,
the family? How did she get connected
how did
with
she
the whole
become the
family? I
thing
got
to the
you.
witch? That's what I'm saying. Because
I
a
got
lot
you.
of times, I guess being a former retired cop, I look at things as an investigator. And I try to piece the missing puzzles by going to certain spots, certain family members, and trying to dig into the history a little bit. It's like almost
Right.
like this place here.
Mm-hmm.
If you dig deep enough, you'll find out a lot more than what's here and what was here at one time. That's what I'm saying. I'm not putting you on the spot. That's just me being a former cop and trying to see where you're going with it, and maybe down the
okay.
road I might be able to help you out.
Okay, well, I'm definitely no former cop, but I've had the law enforcement training, so I'm sure that innocent until proven guilty rings a true bell with you.
No,
Um, Kate
not
Bass,
no, not in this state society. No, you're guilty. You're guilty as hell until you're proven innocent. The way
well,
this,
that's today. That's
yeah,
today's society.
back in the day.
But you know, Kate Batts, the way she got tied into that, she was a neighbor, and reportedly people looked down on her and everything. But how did she get tied into it?
Yeah.
This goes back to the fictional account written in the 1890s. And the person who wrote that account, the Ingram account, had talked about a bad land deal and some other stuff going on. And either the research wasn't done or maybe his memory failed him. But this supposed bad land deal and bad business deal occurred before Ingram was even born. We're talking about 1816, 1817, and he wasn't born until 1832.
Okay.
But he listed this as being Kate Batts and talked a lot about Kate Batts in his fictional novel. The actual event was not with Kate Batts. It was a business dispute between John Bell and Benjamin Batts, who was Kate Batts's brother-in-law. And it had to do with John Bell charging too much interest on the sale of a slave. And John Bell was ultimately kicked out of the Red River Baptist Church because of that. Well,
See,
actually, it was because the church found him innocent, and then Benjamin Batts took the matter to a court of law who found him guilty of usury, which means charging too much interest.
right.
And because he was convicted in court, the church kicked him out. But again, that was Benjamin Batts, not Kate Batts.
Right.
Then there was also a land dispute, and it was stricken out from the Red River Baptist Church records from that time period. But over the years, people have analyzed it, looked at that and some other things, and determined that it was a land dispute with a man named Josiah Fort, who was the brother of the pastor of Red River Baptist Church. And that resulted in Fort being kicked out of the church. And he did not come back to the church until after John Bell died, soon thereafter. And when
Right.
he did, he became the pastor. So interesting little, some side story there. But bottom line, Kate Batts did not come into this or was mentioned until Ingram brought her up, and the events to which he was referring were really having to do with Benjamin Batts, not
Isn't that
Kate.
so intriguing? That is so intriguing to me. They're again guilty by association. It sounds like, that's one of those moments.
Yeah, and
It's
when somebody's trying to write a novel of fiction and trying to set up a good strong backstory and then drive the
yeah,
storyline, they go after whatever they can, and
yeah,
most of the time they do a good job. And I'm definitely not going to take anything away from Ingram from doing
yeah.
a great job of writing a fictional story.
Thank you.
But, back then he didn't have all the resources we have now for
Right.
research. And, between that and then wanting to embellish something, make it bigger than it really was, maybe that's how this stuff about Kate Batts got in there, but it was really Benjamin Batts.
Let's see. There you go. You know what this story reminds me of? Pat, are you familiar with Hampton Roads or Norfolk area, Virginia Beach location?
Virginia Beach, I once investigated a place called the Old Cavalier Hotel and
No,
wrote
that.
about it in my book called Ghostly Cries from Dixie. But
Okay.
other than that, I'm not that familiar with that region of Virginia, although I have investigated uh, locations in Virginia. One of them up there, I believe it's Louisa, Virginia.
Yep.
The other one over in Gorgeville, Virginia.
Oh, you've been to the Exchange. That's right. I forgot we had
Yep,
talked
sure.
about that. And where was it in Louisa that you went to? Sorry, I know
Uh,
sidetrack. I'm just curious now.
this was,
Investigator, you guys.
yeah, the exchange. Um, that was during a period when I ran a paranormal event company, which I've done several of those over the last 40 something years, and we booked an investigation up at the Exchange House. And as soon as we put tickets on sale, they sold out in about an hour. And I was bringing three team leads up there with a group of 10 people per team, and then alternating rooms and sections of the place and outdoors every 30, 45 minutes, to minimize the noise contamination, but allow as many people as we could investigate. So we ended up adding a second night, and that sold out just about as quickly. So ended up hosting two investigation events on a Friday night and a Saturday night up there at the Exchange. And
Yeah.
I guess each night there were like 30 or 40 people. We had to split out into groups. It was probably one of the busiest events I've had to do, but that was with the Exchange. The other place was a private or just kind of a friends only
Okay.
type thing. Some friends of mine and me. This was when we went up to Virginia. The event company went up to Virginia to put on the Exchange investigation.
Yeah.
Somebody affiliated with our company also at that time also owned a place called Dunlora Inn
Oh,
up
yes, the
there.
Dunley.
Yeah,
I'm
up there. I think it's Louisa, Virginia.
yeah.
If it's not Louisa, it's somewhere pretty near there. And we went up there. I think
Yes.
it was the night before we had the big Exchange investigations, and we stayed up there maybe 2 or 3 hours and investigated that as well.
And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because I want people to understand you're not just an author, you're not just a researcher. You've actually been in the paranormal for a good amount of time. And I wanted people to know that you are a true paranormal researcher. When you're doing this research, you're not just a historian. So people need to know that. That's that
Right.
foundation. Make sure we
And yeah.
no.
And
Thank
sadly,
you.
most people don't know that.
Right.
So, it's kind of like my background theme is, hey, folks, it's not all about the Bell Witch. I've been
Right.
doing all things paranormal research, investigating, writing the whole ball of wax since 1978. So that's 46 years.
You got me a little bit. You got me on that a little bit.
Me too. You got me a way off.
Yeah, I'm not just the Bell Witch. I'm interested in other cases too, although the Bell Witch has been a pet project, and I've done considerably more research on that than anything else.
And
But
that's
yeah,
why.
I investigate and research other things.
Rhonda, I'm going to let you hit Valerie's question there.
Yeah, I have one question before we hit Valerie.
Please
So,
do. Ask it, girl.
I mean, I'm just
We're
looking
going
at
to
the
hit
overall
Valerie?
question.
What? One question before we hit Valerie?
I
What?
No,
didn't.
Valerie will hit me, man. No.
Let's don't hit
So,
anybody.
is John Bell's death the only one associated with the Bell Witch? Is that the only death associated potentially with her by legend?
Oh.
John Bell's death is the only death associated with the Bell Witch, associated only by legend, not by death certificate. In fact, not all areas. In fact, in many areas, death certificates were not even issued in 1820. But according to legend, or specifically the version of the legend that somebody wrote in 1894, Ingram, says that the Bell Witch killed John Bell.
Gotcha.
The early original accounts make no mention of that at all.
Good to know. Okay, so now Valerie's question is, other than apparitions, what are other paranormal phenomenon that has been reported?
Okay, anomalous photos, sometimes with apparitions in the photos, sometimes with strange mists. Um, People saying that they've had their hair pulled, they've heard their name whispered, they've had their earlobe pinched, things like that. Then we have the old familiar blame it on the Bell Witch thing, where somebody visits the area, then a week or so later, something bad happens, and without thinking and without question, they immediately blame it on the Bell Witch. And who
Oh,
knows, maybe the Bell Witch is at
yeah.
fault.
Yeah.
But we have those as well as, encounters that people have reported right there in that general area.
There you go.
Now, what part have you come to Virginia? I believe he's.
Yeah,
I might
we
miss
were
it.
we were talking about Virginia.
All right. What actually have you been in Virginia that you investigated? That
Oh.
really.
He's been to the Exchange and Dunmore.
Okay, but
And
have you
the
been
Cavalier Hotel.
the Cavalier Hotel? Well, I tell you what, if you ever come back through Virginia, I would love to take you down to the couple plantations.
Yeah, we love to take you out.
Yeah.
Pat.
The
If you would like-
Tuckahoe Plantation, which is a farmhouse out in Goochland County, and the house is shaped. If you had a helicopter and looked down at the house, it's shaped like a big H.
Yep.
And you talk about
Wow.
paranormal activity.
Yeah,
My group and I investigated that place, and believe me, it takes a lot for me to say, hey,
Yeah.
what happened? But it's definitely paranormal activity in that place.
Oh, yeah. Virginia is full of stuff, with so much long and rich history, old buildings, and the sites of former houses and buildings. Virginia is right near the top of my list of places to return to.
Yeah.
I like the rural areas there, especially up and around the mountains, like Shenandoah Valley, all that area up through there, Blue Ridge Parkway, all that. I love the history. I love the rural area, um, all of that. In fact, when I was up there, I brought the event company up there to do the investigations at the exchange. I did some side trips, or we did one side trip. We went to the Walton's Mountain Museum. I don't know. It may have been
Oh,
before
yes,
time.
Walton, Lynchburg.
Matter of fact, I got a picture of the original Walton.
Yeah,
And
that's up there.
many years
Schuyler's Mountain, I think, is how I can't remember how they pronounce it, but went up there and saw the original Earl Hammer home where the Waltons took place, or what it was based on, and went to the museum up there. Interesting place. I enjoyed that a lot. And then on my way home from the event, I went up the Blue Ridge Parkway, parked my vehicle, and did some hiking up the Appalachian Trail, which that was a lot of fun too. And that was a bucket list item. So I was glad to get that out of the way. But I definitely will be returning to Virginia, and most likely doing a lot of investigating while I'm there.
We enjoy.
Well, you need to come to the cabin.
Yeah,
you definitely need to come to the cabin and go in. And also, I would invite you with him. Of course, I can't tell you to go there, but check out the place next door. Yeah.
Oh, Rancher.
The Rancher. Yeah, that's another place.
We're bringing the cabin on 360
and the Rancher. I tell you, I would go there.
We're almost at the end of the show. I'm going to hand it back over to Rhonda because there's 2 or 3 questions that were asked. I want to make sure they get in before we shut the doors on this episode. Although I'd love to keep them open.
All right, for Lisa, have you yourself had any paranormal activity when on the Bell Witch properties?
I've had some strange things happen. One was I was going to do a little video documentary about the case, and I was shooting some B-roll film, and there were some rabbits playing in a field, and I needed to test my camera some, so I just filmed them. Well, playing the film back later, it showed the field and even me clearing my throat and coughing while the rabbits were playing, but the rabbits were not there. And the interesting tie-in is that in many parts of the Bell Witch legend, this thing allegedly manifested in the form of a rabbit.
Okay.
And another thing, which is a little too long to get into with the limited time we have, but involved me chasing a rabbit just for fun up in that area and going beneath a gravestone and hiding in a hole underneath a gravestone. So I slapped my hand on the gravestone trying to drive the rabbit out of there. And it didn't happen, but as soon as I slapped the gravestone, I heard a baby crying. And then I learned that the gravestone was a gravestone of an infant baby.
Oh,
But
wow.
in
Oh,
all
wow.
fairness, there were several houses right near that grave, and the
Yeah.
windows were open. And I think some younger people of childbearing age lived in those houses. So it might have just been an eerie coincidence, and somebody's baby nearby got sick or something or wet its diapers. But it was interesting. And there
I
were a
know I
few
was
other
done.
things.
I was at feet don't fail me now.
Don't feel me now.
Don't fail me now. Everything don't fail me now.
Well, let's
But
get
I've had some other
Valerie's
things
in
up
before we
there.
shut the door.
I've heard some, some whisper sounds. I've taken pictures up there in the general area of the old Bell Farm and seen some strange looking things in those too. So I'm one of the encounter people as well.
Oh, well, Rhonda, let's get Valerie's last one in there before we end the show. But before we do that, Pat, I would like to invite you to come back either
Yeah.
sometime this year or next year and visit with us again. I want to talk some more, and maybe we can get that theory of yours out.
Yeah, well, I'd love to come back. I don't know when I'm going to present that theory yet. Like I said, I've got to be very careful. I got to present it the right places, as well as prepare for all the negative fallout and pushback that I'm going to get on it.
Well,
If
let's
that's
go paranormal.
if that's any hint where I'm going to ultimately go with it. Uh, but I would love to come back. Any haunting you want to discuss,
Yeah.
or especially anything I've been involved with, which I've investigated in a lot of different states. If you want to talk about that, evidence review
Yeah.
techniques, baselining, what have you,
I love it.
just let me know and we'll
Yeah.
get it done. And I
Well,
think you said Valerie or somebody had another question.
yeah.
Yeah. Have there been any EVPs caught in the Bell Witch location?
Yes, I've heard of a lot of EVPs. I personally have not brought an audio recorder or a video with audio in there for it, but I've heard a lot of EVPs that people have taken in that general area. I actually was with some people in Mississippi doing a permissioned investigation of the graveyard where Betsy Bell is buried. Of course, she moved from Tennessee after the haunting and ended up in Mississippi. And we got a really, really strange, good Class A EVP there. But
No.
yes, to answer the question, yes, people have caught EVPs there. Um, I was part of a festival one time up there, Bell Witch Festival, and one of the dare events that I put on was to spend the night in the Bell Log Cabin, which is a log cabin that was on the old John Bell farm, although the family didn't live in that particularly.
Okay.
And I brought in a friend of mine from MTV who was a producer for the show there and a paranormal investigator in her own right. And for the people who attended that event, she did an automatic writing session, if you're familiar with that. And the
Absolutely.
things she wrote down about, some names that popped into her head and some water in a river and drowning and all that. We looked it up later on and come to find out it all fit into place perfectly. And I
That's
thought that was interesting as well.
I love that. Pat, where can people find you if they want to contact you? Let's give some information, your books. Let's get you out there, and then we will slide out.
My picture's on the wall of every post office in the U.S.
I've seen it.
Damn you, cop.
That's part of being a paranormal researcher of a controversial case. Everybody's out to get you, or some people are.
Hey, you said it on the post office. Do me a favor. Turn this way. Turn sideways. I want to see the profile. That's it.
I thought he looked familiar.
I'm just checking.
Paranormal wanted.
Somebody once told me that my side profile. This was when I was younger and I weighed about 100 pounds more. They said my side head profile looked exactly like that of Al Capone's side profile.
Well,
But anyway, I thought that was interesting.
That's another
To
story.
find me, the books are on Amazon and most retailers. Ghostly Cries from Dixie, which is a collection of ghostly tales and haunted information from around the South, as well as The Bell Witch, the full account. There is also an author fan page on Facebook, also for the book, The Bell Witch, the full account. When you get into things like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, the names of the accounts are the Bell Witch site, because that's the name of my Bell Witch site, is the Bell Witch site, which is at http, well, wait a minute, I don't have to do all that anymore, www.bellwitch.org, O-R-G. The site's been there since the mid-1990s and still going strong, bellwitch.org.
There you go.
There you go. And we want to take this time and thank you all, travelers and those alike, for tuning in tonight with our special guest, Pat Fitzhugh. Thank you, KB, for sitting in with me tonight.
I appreciate you having me.
Co-hosting. And as always, my handler, Rhonda, she handles me. We want to thank all
and
of
all
you.
the great questions. Thanks everybody for asking questions.
It was amazing. As we end this,
great questions.
Absolutely. We just want to make sure we tell everybody, thank you so much. Let's try to continue to work together. Let's give some unity. Let's make a combination. Like Valerie's wanting him on the show. Valerie, you will love him. Pat, thank you so much. We will have you back again. I promise you, because I want to talk more with you, sir.
Yeah, that went too fast.
Too fast.
Yeah, nice meeting you, man. Nice meeting you.
This has been a great interview. I enjoyed every minute of it. I really enjoyed the thought-provoking questions, and I'd like to thank all those great people who tuned in to listen, whether you ask questions or not. I really appreciate it, and love to come back sometime.
Absolutely. Travelers and those like, may virtue be yours.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.